I got to say, I just wasn't prepared for this meeting. I haven't been to too many story meetings, being in broadcasting. We kind of stand in second place, I think, to artists and poets and essayists and novelists, until very recently, when all of a sudden this technology came about, that was iTunes and such, that we could be captured and we could be stored and then we could be listened to over and over and over again, like you might read a book or something. And the idea that we might have a chance to become a kind of literature, a thing that lasts, is such a new, such a fresh and such a peculiar idea to those of us who do, broadcast, that I don't think we've gotten used to it yet. So I came here and I listened to Chris and to Carmen and Jackie and Leslie and Wendy and Richard, Dan and John and Michael, Chris, everyone. I am so amazed to find myself in this company. So, and talk about man crushes. I think I would drop my pants pretty much for everybody who's been on this stage. Since they've been dropping it for each other, I just want to join them there. But I have to say, this is an honor that I did not know was such an honor until I found myself here, thrilled and surprised and amazed. So that's, I just wanted to say that because for those of us who work in this airy business, these people who work on pages and where there's a sort of solidity there, it's just like we've always been jealous. And all of a sudden, suddenly we're players. And then Starley walks in. And I don't know. So Michael actually covered most of the ground I was thinking to do, but this is the invisible middle part of the process. The what is the story? How do you get the good ones? How do you know the good ones from the bad ones? How do you begin them? How do you end them? Where do you find them? Because as we've said for the past few days, it's in the fundamentals. It's in the small choices that you have to make all the time, that you can't prepare for. The this word versus that choice, the how do I say this better part, the how can I find my way to say what I feel as accurately and truly and honestly as I possibly can. This is the real work of all these businesses, and this is where the job really is. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you the broadcast version of this, because I work in sound, I work in pictures and TV, radio, podcast. I have to work kind of fast with wit and instinct because we don't have a lot of time, and I guess I'm going to start with finding a story. So how do we in the broadcast side do this? One time I was on an airplane, and the guy next to you, you're on a plane, you ask the person next to you nothing usually, but if you must, you say like, so what do you do? This guy next to me said, well, I'm in golf ball retrieval. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, I'm in golf ball retrieval, it's my job. I said, well, golf ball retrieval, didn't know about that. He said, well, it's golf balls are regularly hit in golf courses, and a lot of the balls plop into these water holes. And you get a clump of enormous number, tens of thousands of golf balls in these holes on these in Louisiana, California, Texas golf courses. So someone has to remove them. I said, really, why would you remove them? So, well, we can take them, they'll pay us 10 cents for every ball that we pull out of the water holes, and then we can sell them for a quarter to the Japanese, who for some reason collect old wet balls, for whatever reason, it's not quite clear. I said, so really, golf ball retrieval, interesting, ding, 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 just sort of thought, maybe that's a story, I never heard that business before. So, well, what are the costs of the business? Like, what is? Well, we hire teenagers, so the cost is modest. There's the alligator problem. I said, the alligator problem. What is the alligator problem? So, well, there's in Florida and in Texas, California, Louisiana, you get alligator problems. In an alligator world, when you're a baby alligator, you're allowed to hang around the family for a while. But when you grow to a sort of sexual puberty, and I don't know if they have puberty in alligators, but as you get to a certain place, the alpha alligator says, get out of here, and you have to go somewhere, and you go to a golf course, because it's sort of alligator friendly. You just plop yourself into the water hole, and that's where you can stay. The problem is you can't send teenagers into a place where you know there's an alligator, or fear there's an alligator, because there's liability issues. So, and dead teenagers. So we have to do alligator removal. Bing, 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 bing. I said, alligator removal? Who does alligator removal? He says, well, it's a small business. I said, there's a guy named George. There's a guy named George? Yes, he's actually fairly old. He's like pushing 75 or something. Ding, 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 ding. I'm thinking, well, is there a way I can find this guy, George? Says, well, yeah, he lives in so I look up, it's George Campbell was his name. I look up every George Campbell. Finally, I find this guy, this George Campbell listed. I call George Campbell in Gainesville, wherever it was, and he's not there. He apparently has just left his wife for a new girlfriend. And the wife starts to talk to me, and she is furious at George. So she says, well, I don't know. I don't know where he is, and I don't really care where he is. He's with her. I suppose he's told you about our secret alligator zoo in Michigan in the basement. Ding, 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 ding. I said, the secret alligator zoo in the basement. He might have mentioned that. I said, I've not talked to this man yet. I said, what was it about the zoo again? He said, well, it was really, he loved alligators. We were in a very fancy place near Detroit, where a lot of auto executives live, and he, in the basement of our considerably large-sized house, we just put bathtubs all in the basement, hooked up with water, and he just bought alligators from everywhere, and we had an enormous number of alligators and crocodiles in the basement, and we would flush and the water all over, and then we had more alligators, she says, than the Berlin Zoo. I said, well, did the Berlin Zoo? She said, that was the largest official collection in the world, but we had more. Is it in the basement, in Grosse Pointe? In Grosse Pointe, yes, in Grosse Pointe. I said, oh, wow. Ding, 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 ding. She said, but then, I said, I don't, remind me what I don't know. She said, then the sewing ladies came. Oh, yes, the sewing ladies. Now my heart is beating. What happened with the sewing ladies again? She says, well, they came with their, it was the sewing circle. It was my sewing circle. And one of the women brought a Singer sewing machine that had a certain tone to it. And when she turned on the sewing machine, not some, but all of the male alligators in the basement in our house went, which was more or less inexplicable because it couldn't, I said it was raining, but the sky was, there was no easy way to explain that. And of course you were not allowed to have 120 reptiles in your basement. So it was a nerve. I said, well, what was it about the sewing machine that would, she said, well, I don't know. George came home and we listened to every one of the sewing machines, but to hers in particular, and it seemed to hum in B flat, 2 octaves below middle C or something. So we decided that maybe there was some kind of connection between that B flat and an alligator sense of invasion or something. Bing, 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 bing. So I'm thinking, wow. Now the question really for all of us is, where do you stop in this story? This is an unusual situation. I'm palpitating at this point. You got golf ball retrieval, pretty good story. You got alligator removal, pretty good story. You got the secret basement zoo, very good story. You got the B-flat bellowing, scientific story. Which one do you go for? And this is the case whenever you're doing this in life. You either have to pump up something and try to find something good in it, or you have to, if you're lucky like me on that day, you have to winnow. But the question is like, what do you do? How do you choose? And I think the answer to this is you go for deep delight. I mean, there are practical considerations. You will have an audience, unfortunately, as Michael mentioned. You will have to try to delight that audience and make people laugh or cry. At least that's the goal. You have a boss who has to desire your story, so you have to, as we were saying before, you have to sell to the boss. You may have a demographic. You may be in a sports magazine, in which case you want the athletics. You might be in a science magazine, which want to be, whatever you have to do. You of course are going to work with constraints, but you have to choose, I think, for yourself. This is the deep ego part. You have to believe that if you choose, and I chose B flat, if you choose one of these things, you can love it well enough, articulately enough, carefully enough, and beautifully enough that you can force total strangers with no interest in alligators, bellowing, or B flat to fall for your tale. You will make them love it. That is your goal. And what happens over a lifetime in this business is you think, well, I'm just doing this because my delight is, in this particular case, leads me to B flat. But after about 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you'll begin to notice that over and over and over again, the filter that you choose to delight yourself by turns out to be you. over your life, you begin to start to confess yourself to yourself and eventually to your audience and your editors, so they begin to say, oh, that's a Chris Jones story. Now, if you're Chris Jones, you don't want to be told you have a Chris Jones story. You want to be an omnivore, and you want to think that the world and everything in it is available to you. But really what happens, I work with a guy named Ted Koppel in the United States, who was a really good investigative reporter and a wonderful moderator of a show we worked on together. And I was told that he was a person who hated a lie. And he particularly hated a lie in a powerful man. So if he met a dictator, met a general, met a politician, and the politician said something that he knew or suspected was untrue, Ted Koppel would, like a missile, just go after that lie. But he had no sense of discretion, so he was in Philadelphia, apparently, with one of the other producers. They were in a park. Some guy came up to just score some money from him so they could go buy dope. He said, hey, man, if you give me $1, I can have coffee, okay? And Ted Koppel, unable to control, said, you mean coffee or do you mean something else? He says, well, no, coffee, man, I want coffee. And then he just goes and just follows the guy around this park, breaking him down so that he would confess that what he really wanted was heroin. And the producer says, come on, he's not a prime minister, he's just a bum in the park, like, give him a break, you know. And so, but Ted Koppel was on. And Ted Koppel just was that guy. There's another fellow I work with, Scott Simon, in NPR. His interest is, are you good or are you bad? I'm going to morally weigh you. I want to know whether you're more evil or more angelic. And there's no way you can get him off that. You know, he will go up to a turnip and say, are you good or are you bad? In my case, it seems to me like, how do you do that? Seems to be my version. But this is what eventually is called voice. That is how you choose what you choose. Now, I chose the B flat. I hired a high school marching band to go in full plumage into the Everglades, this is television, and they brought brass and everything, and I put them in front of a large swamp, which I was assured was just filled with alligators, and then the tuba group came up and went, and I waited for a number of alligators to immediately emerge, and nothing happened. I had a brand new producer who looked like she was going to kill herself, because I said, how was she going to explain? There was a bus, and there were all these the people in the plumage, and George Campbell saying, this bellowing idea is your idea. I said, no, this is your idea. So we're already having the Civil War there. And all of a sudden, a bus of French tourists arrive, and some guy comes off the bus and says, what are you doing? I said, we're getting this B flat with the Godwin Quarter in the basement of the Grove. He says, no. That was in a tub. It was in a tub in the basement in Michigan. And there was cement in the house, so the B flat from the sewing machine goes through the concrete, and you cannot do it in the mud with all of these flowers. You must go to a concrete location. So then the French tourists, and then the marching band, and the ABC crew, and George, we all get in a bus, and we start going to some roadside attraction, which was a lot of alligators in concrete. Now, the sun is getting lower and lower in the horizon, and my producer's going, and my ding, ding, ding is going down at this point. But at the last possible moment, one tuba player stands up at the edge of a pond. The camera people are so about this, they don't even think the alligators are going to do anything. So they're in the alligator pit, sitting on little concrete, and finally, the last tuba, the sun is approaching, the producer's going, no, go do it! And so he goes, and, like all over the concrete pool, little bubbles start. And these, apparently when alligators bellow, they vibrate violently in their rib cages. They're long animals. At first there was a sizzle, and then there was a bubble, and then there was a pop, and then an enormous multiple bellow, which we got on film, 4.5 million rating points or whatever, yay. So that should be the end of the story. But I couldn't quite give up my B-flat thing. Having scored so well with the alligators on television, on radio, I thought, you know how it is sometimes when you're going to the subway, well, you don't go into the subway, well, there's a subway here, or you just walk onto the street, and you see for the first time a lady with a blue nose and a pink flower in her ear. You think, I've never seen a lady with a blue nose and that pink flower. Never seen that before. And then the same day you see 3 more. So apparently it's like the lady with the pink flower, because suddenly your brain is attuned to ladies with pink flowers and so on. Same with B flat. I began gathering B flat stories constantly. So I go to NPR, which, ABC is a very serious company. NPR, in its way, is even a more serious company. And I proposed to them a B-flat fugue. And I don't know quite, no one was paying much attention. So I actually did, remember, this is going to be in the middle of a newscast in the morning, a show called Morning Edition. It tells you who shot who got elected, what sports teams did this, that, and the other. And it's not really prepared for an alligator bellowing fugue, but I will, and this one is really odd. So why don't we just play the first one? This is Something About B-flat, a musical news piece. And it will begin.
Yes. Here we go.
Have you heard about B-flat? A special magic frequency that is found all around in the world it abounds. There's something universal about B-flat.
Start the story.
Yes, start us off, Robert.
All right, then. I read that scientists at the American Museum of Natural History once found that if you play a B-flat to a male alligator...
How does one do that?
With a tuba.
Of course a tuba.
Absolutely. So I asked a tuba player, Phil Porter, of the Cypress Lake High School Marching Band in Florida, to play a B-flat to a pit of alligators. We did this for ABC television. He did it once. Then he did it a second time. And indeed, when the alligators heard the B-flat, they began to bellow. Presumably, they mistook the B-flat for an invading alligator.
Just when they hear B-flat?
That's right, just B-flat. You play male gators a middle C, you play them a G-sharp, they just sit there. But if you are a gator, there is something about a B-flat that makes you want to bite the tuba.
All this talk of B-flat has made me want to bite a tuba.
Have you heard
Now, you understand, this other voice, we can keep going. This other voice is Vin Liotta, a friend of mine. This is not in any way normal for NPR, in any way. Let's keep going.
And respond to it by croaking
They don't do musical.
B-flat.
All right, Robert, what's next?
Next is the story of Glenway Fripp, a piano tuner in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. One day, Mr. Fripp was climbing some stairs. He was humming roughly in B-flat when he hit a landing, and he noticed that his hum had somehow got away from him. So he wasn't humming, but his hum was still there, bouncing off the walls without him. And Glenway thought, well, this corner seems to be shaped to hold a B-flat. And we said, could you do this again?
So we're going to walk into this corner. I'm going to be singing B-flat, and all of a sudden my voice will disappear, and all you will hear is the resonance, because the resonance is almost equal to my voice. Okay, the note we're searching for is somewhere around this.
Okay, now we're going to put our mic into the corner. Listen very, very closely. The corner has just grabbed hold of Mr. Glenway's tone. His B-flat has just escaped.
You can't even hear my voice, right? And that's how I discovered this. You're just talking and you, wow, what is that weirdness jumping out at me from the, oh.
That weirdness is a B-flat that used to belong to Mr. Fripp, but no more.
This is Glenway Fripp.
Thanks, Glenway. Anyway, speaking of resonance, did you know
Now, this will go on. I will discover that there is a galaxy that hums in B-flat 27 octaves below C. And at a certain point, the anchor at the morning edition is just... when the piece ended, he just went, uh-huh. In other news, and there was a kind of... You could just feel... that this was the equivalent musically of being in a sort of a chorale, which going dum 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 dum, and you were the odd note there, and it's not appreciated, and it's not really. There's no thank you for that sort of thing, but if you're going to be a gambler in this business, you have to throw yourself sometimes into the path of the normal, and it doesn't always work out. On the TV, it worked out great. In the radio, it apparently offended. Although I got a whole, maybe 150 letters saying, "Go, boy," that kind of thing, but also quite a few saying, "I don't know what that was, but I think I'd like to call it an obscenity." So, and this happens to me all the time. At one time, I got a videotape from a marine biologist, and I looked at the tape, and I thought, oh my God. Now, it shows an octopus in the shallow Caribbean, in just, shallow water in the sunshine, I had never seen anything like this before. So I run downstairs to Peter Jennings' office at ABC News, because he was my boss at the time, the anchor of the evening news. I said to him, I have an octopus story that is going to just knock your socks off. He goes, no, not today, Robert. He said, no, it's so good. Let me just play this for you. He goes, no. He said, no, I'm just going to stick it. He had this console in his office. So I'm going to stick this tape. You are not going to regret this, Peter. Just open the cabinet. He said, I'm not opening the cabinet door. I said, why won't you open the cabinet door? You're the anchor. You got to see this thing. He said, it may have escaped your notice, but the United States Army has just occupied Baghdad. We've just conquered the city. Saddam Hussein and his two sons, Uday and the other one, are, missing somewhere, and that is what we're concentrating. I said, for the whole show, you have 18 and a half minutes. You can spare 2 minutes for my octopus, please. No, I will not do that. I said, okay, and when I get on a thing, it's another thing. I said, what if I make my octopus story about Saddam Hussein? So now I have his complete attention. He's looking at me. I am not especially proud of what you are about to see. You could just run that one, yeah. It's pretty horrible. You'll need audio, though. Yeah. Oh, you can't hear it? Well, this just has the background sound. Well, can you see if you can find the audio? Because this morning we had it. Well, all right, I'll narrate it for you. Here's this bush in tropical waters, and the camera pushes, and then suddenly this appears. Out of the blue. This guy is incredible. He shoots the black sort of fluid. And now this is so good you have to kind of reverse it and just come back and just take a look at it. He's going to come back, and what we're going to see now in extreme slow motion is you're going to watch this octopus, and this is an intentional act, by the way, slowly become the bush that he appears to be a part of. Every cell is orchestrated to be just the same patina as the bush, just the same texture. This animal, this is a willful act and it's a skillful act. He's going to pucker his skin so that he begins to represent, you see the puckers growing there, and the puckers will assume the shape of the sea anemone totally, completely. Right, and then this is a coach. And I'm thinking, can't you, but unfortunately, what you missed at the beginning is the way I couched this is I said that Saddam Hussein is missing, and if he needs a plastic surgeon to disguise himself, he could do no better than to go visit an octopus. And then I end with that. And then this poor marine biologist has to say something about Saddam Hussein, which has never even remotely occurred to him. So Peter says to me, what do you do here anyway? And I said to him, well, you're doing this just in all the time, and I do this always is. That's my job. I am convinced, I'm totally convinced, that you can mix science and mystery and complexity into a general audience show and make it totally interesting to people. And to prove it, a bunch of years ago with my partner Jad Abumrad, we created Radiolab, which is this podcast and radio show. It's gotten very popular. And for us, the ideal is to address something that is emotionally or technically complex and make it as tight and clear and efficient and as gorgeous as we possibly can. And the easiest way to do this is to just choose something which is just innately elegant. So, for example, here's an example of a perfectly gorgeous idea. Tony Schwartz, a producer, had a baby girl. And he decided to record a day, maybe 10 minutes of that girl every year on its birthday. And all he did was he took I think it's the first 12 years, let's just list, of his baby girl. And all you hear is time collapsing. You just hear the baby girl growing up right before your ears.
Here, sped up for your appreciation, is Nancy Schwartz, from birth to age 12, in 2 minutes, 12 seconds exactly.
Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke down, and Jill came tumbling after. Happy birthday, Daddy. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. If you put the toy still up and you say, I want a puppy and a whistle and a horn and a hat and a dress and a ballerina costume, that's what you get. But when Santa Claus can't bring you, you can't cry. Tony, if the dog makes Willie in the house, if you have to make him housebroken, if he makes a wee-wee in the apartment, you have to slap him with a newspaper. Then if he doesn't do it again, he's housebroken.
What do you think of the Russians sending the dog up in the satellite?
Well, I hope he doesn't get hurt. But if he does, I'm sure they'll send up a medical satellite. In school, we each had to do a report on someplace. And I'm doing a report on Hawaii. And we're taking notes and doing research. This summer we're going camping, and in the month of July this summer, for the whole month of July this summer, I'm going to go to Brownie Sleepaway Camp. It's all girls. You'll miss my hair, and it's very special for tonight. It's just the way I want it. It's in a page boy with a high top, and that's the way I like it. I'm taking guitar lessons, and that's fun. I take drama lessons after school, and that's great. And I've been working on the school newspaper. I might be editor next year. And I've been discovering boys.
See, that's so simple, and it just flows right out. And it's bittersweet. Yeah, it's just bittersweet. So what you're doing there is you are, to go to our theme, you are creating, this is a story which is creating a temporal space. It's the growing up space. It's the baby becomes a girl, becomes a young woman space. That's a pretty easy territory. It's a territory we know. Cellular biology is not. So you know what a baby girl is and how a baby girl grows into a big one. People don't know what it's like inside a cell. So I was at one point asked to do a story involving cellular biology. And here, in this kind of situation, you create a place which you have to teach without teaching. So this was done at NPR. It's a video. We had a video. We did lots of fun videos from time to time. And this was during an avian flu scare. And they said, could you just explain what a flu is? And so that will take you to a area which is more or less unknown to most people. And I chose, as you'll notice when you watch this, I chose to use no fancy words. So, you could talk about RNA or DNA or ribosomes or vacuoles and things that 8th and 9th graders know. But I wasn't really addressing learned 8th and 9th graders. I was trying to address everybody who were a little bit frightened about the flu. So the way I describe, and the descriptive language here, is entirely about the visuals. If something is popcorn looking, I call it that popcorn looking thing. You don't have to know that it's a ribosome. All you have to know is where to look. So like in sportscasting, they just tell you, okay, you actually see, they reconstruct a scene instantly to show you who got a ball or a puck or whatever, and they, in this case, I'm going to direct you just by language. So let's just look at the viral one.
So let's say that this guy has the flu, could be any flu, and here's a droplet from his sneeze containing, if we move in and take a really close look, you see each one of those little purple things is a virus. And there are a lot of viruses floating through the air, some of which go inevitably up this unfortunate man's nose.
How did that guy feel when you ripped off half of his face?
It was interesting because we did it while he was sleeping.
Okay. I am talking with medical illustrator David Belinsky, who designed this video for Xyrus, a research company. So here comes the virus, and it's going to land on a throat cell. And notice that the virus is covered with little yellow projectile-y things. You call them keys?
Those are the keys.
Yeah. This is a key, this is a key, this is a key.
Okay, if the key on this virus happens to fit the locks, which are those little purpley sticky-up things on the surface of this cell, if there is a match, the cell, watch this, welcomes the virus in. And what's this?
This is the welcoming committee. They all interlock with each other, and they pull this membrane down into the cell.
And down it goes deeper and then deeper, and the welcoming committee disperses. The virus capsule bursts, and out comes the secret recipe for how to make more viruses. And this unsuspecting innocent cell has been tricked into guiding these virus recipes right into its own nucleus, its own command center. So in they go.
And they are immediately recognized by this big pink molecule, which is a mini factory.
Yeah, what is it doing?
It threads the nuclear material, the instruction code of the virus, through one hole, and out another hole comes a brand new instruction set.
So it's a copying machine making copy after copy after copy of virus recipes, which then go out of the nucleus to little chefs, those blue peanutty things. They cook up proteins that go back into the nucleus where they are reassembled into baby viruses, and then out they go. They get covered up and head to the surface where they get new keys, and then boom, here they come. This is an eruption of virus after virus after virus after. Only one virus entered the cell, but how many came out? Well, millions. Millions. So if one virus can produce 1 million babies and do it again and again and again, how come this guy doesn't just drop dead, I don't know, in like 10 minutes?
Well, because you have about 100 trillion cells.
I see. So 1 million viruses is just a drop in the bucket when you have 100 trillion cells. And anyway, remember, you do have your own immune system, which when it sees a virus usually kills it. So, while the virus does multiply fast, with any luck, your immune system will work just a little faster. Unless the virus accidentally picks up a new gene or two traveling through, I don't know, some other organism.
Well, we can stop here. But so the point is, this is just a carefully wrought sort of. I'll explain to you the thing about radio that's. And also about this kind of filming. You use descriptive words, and when I say to you, just imagine a little house on a hill. On television, I have to put a house on a hill. And some of you will say, that's not really a hill, it's more like a mountain. And then you'll be talking to yourself, and you'll miss what I'm in the next sentence. But if I tell you to put buds in your ear, and I say to you in a quiet voice, imagine a house on top of a hill. Who's imagining now? You are. You don't quite realize it, but you and I have just become co-authors of the piece. I'm telling you what to paint, you're painting. It's no longer you staring at a television screen having a question about my choices. We're making these choices together, and I'm talking to 30,000 people. That's 30,000 houses on 30,000 hills. You like them, I never see them, but we're working together. And this gives you a kind of room for complexity and a room to explore ideas that you don't always get on television. As cool as this was, what I can do in your head is even better. But in order to do that, I have to be really, well, I want to just let you into our process. I'm going to interview for a second. I'm going to play you with a raw interview of a woman named Cynthia Kenyon. She's a geneticist, and she made a remarkable discovery. She was able to take a worm, which lived for 7 weeks, and get it to live for 14. So she doubled its life. It was called the Methuselah worm. And the way she did this was she found two, they're called regulator genes. She found 2 genes, one of which, when it turns on, it goes... It's kind of like a Jesse James gene, and it kills the cells in the area, and so it is the death machine. The other one is just the repair gene. Now, they have 2 very unfortunate names. One is DAF2, and the other is DAF16. So in this raw interview, you'll hear her talking. She's a wonderful teacher and a great scientist. So let's play the before.
The DAF16 gene makes a protein called the DAF16 protein. And that protein binds to the DNA where other genes are, and it activates or deactivates a whole bunch of other genes in the DNA. So the way it works is that the hormone binds to the DAF2 receptor. And when that happens, DAF2 receptor kind of squashes the activity of DAF16. It turns it down. Okay? So DAF16 can't bind to its genes
now,
in the DNA. Now,
if you listen to this, squash, bind, those are words you can understand, but the nouns, DAF2, they don't signify anything. So what we have here is a sort of, we need to do a little, as Jad called it, noun therapy. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take this interview and give her a sort of makeover in which we will work on the nouns, giving them a life and a specificity that they wouldn't have had from Cynthia alone. Here's what we did with this interview. This is
So what exactly is this gene doing to make them live longer?
Well, maybe we should ask the question a different way, because the worms that lived longer, they didn't actually have this working gene.
Right. When we make a mutation in the DAF2 gene, we damage it. It actually causes it not to work as well. So that actually is kind of profound. That tells you right away that the worm has a gene in it that's shortening the worm's lifespan.
Which is why she calls it
the Grim Reaper gene.
The Grim Reaper gene.
It's the gene that makes you die.
If you're a worm.
Right. So, by damaging this gene, Cynthia and her team essentially are taking the Grim Reaper and knocking his knees out.
Stop that!
Okay, so the question is, what exactly is the DAF2 doing to make the cell age more quickly?
Here's where the story gets a little weird.
Well, we found another gene whose name is also DAF, but it's a different DAF. It's called DAF16.
DAF16!
And this is a gene whose normal function is to keep you young. It's like a fountain of youth gene.
So wait, there was a Grim Reaper gene before.
Right.
And now there's a fountain of youth gene?
That's what she discovered. And inside the worms, these genes are struggling with each other. Here's how it works when a worm ages normally.
The DAF2 receptor
DAF2
kind of squashes the activity of DAF16. It turns it down.
Silence!
And so the worm ages.
Okay? So when you come along and you inhibit the activity of the DAF2 receptor, ouch! Now you liberate DAF16. It's free. It springs into action. And it activates about 100 genes in the DNA. These 100 genes each do a little tiny good thing for the cell. And altogether it makes the cell live twice as long.
So, you see, now you can't do this without the scientist's permission. You can't do an interview and then suddenly cover it up with silly voices and stuff. So you have to ask them for permission to editorialize and cartoonify what they've said. In an overwhelming number of cases, they are more than happy to do it, because this allows them to take something they are proud of and make people who would not otherwise understand what has happened understand what has happened. But from a technical point of view, just so that you understand how involved this is, I want to show you a typical slide of an ordinary radio piece. This would be slide number 1, which, if you look, you'll see something in purple, then something on the second row that's sort of pale green or yellow or something. So what that purple is that's somebody's talking, and then the second was that's someone else talking. That's basically that's what it looks like on a computer. If you want to be, let's do slide 2. If you want to be a little more sophisticated, you can go honk, honk, beep, beep, honk, honk in the second half. So you go honk, honk. So that's called ambience. If you want to do This American Life, which Starley used to work, then you add a little bit of music. So now you've got the voices, you've got the traffic, and now you've got the level of music. If you want to do what you just heard, I'll just show you what Radiolab looks like. It's more or less orchestral, and this business down below, all of these other sounds, which are treated sounds, compressed sounds, musical instruments, and so on, are all there simply in the service of the idea. our objective is to explain, and our objective is to remind people what it's really like to be curious. And the normal way they do this in journalism is the reporter is given the assignment, and they go out and they do their interviews, and they try to figure out what's going on, and they get things wrong, and they get them fixed, and they write the sentences, and the sentences are corrected, and all the messy stuff is done off stage, and then they step in front of their audience and deliver. In this show, we do exactly the opposite. We make the mistakes in front of people, we argue with each other, we listen to somebody and can't either of us figure out what the person has just said, and we bargain back and forth about what it is and go back to them. We model what it's like to learn. Now, Michael already played you his really stupid question. I was going to play you our best stupid question of all time, but since Pat Walters was the author of that question, and he's already, said nice hello from California, and since I think Michael's stupid question is probably so gloriously stupid that it actually out-stupided Pat's question, so I will surrender to Michael. But let me finish in this way, or semi-finish. I have two things I'd just like to do, but I'm getting almost done, because we're at the way end, and you probably want to have a drink. But this is something that Jackie and I talked about yesterday. You can't, you will never know what's going to happen when you go out and ask a question of the world. You can't know. So one of the things you're supposed to do is you're supposed to wait. If you have a chance to wait. I mean, sometimes on deadline pressure you can't. But the waiting delivers. And it delivers in small, just exquisitely beautiful ways. So recently we decided to just explore stillness because we thought it was just such a hard problem. And one of the ideas we thought of, this was a video idea, we thought we'd just go to New Orleans, where people spend a lot of their days just sitting on stoops, apparently doing nothing at all. They sometimes talk to themselves. They sometimes look like they're just in a daze. But there's parts of New Orleans, particularly in the poorer sections, where you just see an awful lot of stoop sitting. And it's not domino playing stoop sitting like you see sometimes in northern cities. There's nobody playing stickball. They're just sitting there. And the problem you will have, particularly the Bucarestis among you, is that these people in Louisiana speak English the way Scottish people speak English. It's hard to make sure it's English, but if I were to say to you, hello, my name is Fred, they go, hello, my name is Fred. That would be the way it's parses. So you're going to listen to these stoop sitters, but they're not doing anything. But then one crazy little thing happens, which justifies the whole.
Yeah, well, you just relaxing your hands, your arms, your legs, enjoying the sunshine and shade. I'm not busy. I'm just relaxing.
I'm not busy. I'm just relaxing.
Some days I don't feel good, and some days I do, Usually set for about 10, 11 hours, 2-3 hours.
Oh, until the sun goes down.
I just like to sit out here, that's all. Not minding nobody's business or nothing like that. I just like to say, taking it easy.
I just take it easy.
Some of the people, some of them speak.
Some people don't
some of them don't speak. And some of them is glad to talk with you,
I don't care. I watch the Young River. I don't care where I'm working. I watch my Young River every day.
I have no idea.
I come out here and watch the cars and watch the score.
Sometimes they be crawling on that light wire,
Can't hear, it's getting close.
Well, it's not a waste of time. I'll be waiting for the mail.
Wait for the
mailman to pass.
That's the mailman.
It may seem like we're not doing anything, but
Depends on how you look at the day and the situation.
it's like solitude to me. Just being yourself, just enjoying life.
What I need to do in life, putting our new life together.
I didn't want to think about the shit. Like I said, it gets you to know your neighbors. It gets you to know things, what's going on in your neighborhood.
It makes you feel like you have a place. Like you belong with people. It's almost like a family thing.
It is family. I mean, it's bullshit, but it is family.
Everybody knows somebody that you know.
Hello. 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 You just be yourself. Hi. Hello.
That's it. So you don't know when these moments are going to pop up, but the point is, when you're a reporter, you just can't get too tight. You just have to keep your mind open. And I'm going to finish with one of the more cool and astonishing things that ever happened to us. We were investigating the nature of music, and all we wanted to know was, like, where does it come from? Maybe it was from gesture, like ooh, I don't know. Maybe it was from birds or wind or mommy talk. Kind of thing. Maybe it somehow emerged from plain speech. And in exploring the emergence from plain speech, we met a lady who was a speech therapist and who recorded people in loops, recorded people in loops, recorded people in loops, recorded people in loops, recorded people in loops. So she would take a sentence or a phrase and just simply make it repeat over and over again. And this lady made a discovery, which you're about to hear. What you're about to hear is exactly what she heard, and what you're about to hear is pretty much as fresh as the first time she heard it. The phrase is, sometimes things behave so strangely. Let's let it.
I'll tell you what happened is that when you do post-production, as you know, of speech, you loop things, so that you can zero in on P's, that sound too loud, you need to unpop, or S's that sound too sharp, and so on. So you put things on loops in order to fine-tune the way the speech sounds. So I had this particular phrase on a loop and forgot about it.
What phrase was this?
It's a phrase that occurs at the beginning of the CD, in which I say, the sounds as they appear to you are not only different from those that are really present, but they sometimes behave so strangely as to seem quite impossible. Now, I had sometimes behave so strangely looped. The sounds as they appear to you are not only different from those that are really present, but they sometimes behave so strangely. Just those few words. Sometimes behave so strangely. And forgot about it. Sometimes behave so strangely. So
here's what happened. Diana leaves her studio. She closes the door, goes into the kitchen to make some tea. All the while, this loop is whirring away in the background. As she's sipping her tea, she thinks, is someone singing? Who's singing?
I heard what sounded like song in the background.
She realized, wait a second. That's not singing, that's me. Talking.
That very phrase. Strangely. But at this point, sometimes behaves so strangely. It appeared to be sung rather than spoken. Sometimes behaves so strangely. This is sometimes behaves so strangely, right? Yeah. You still hear the words, but they're sung words rather than spoken words.
It's weird, like it just switches at a certain point. 3 or 4 repetitions in.
Right.
It's going, and then pow! It becomes music. And then now none of us can get it out of our head. Like the whole office is like, sometimes behave so strangely.
sometimes behave so strangely.
And you know what? If you do this demo and then you go back to the original sentence, it sounds like, speech to begin with. And when you come to that very phrase, I seem to be bursting into song.
The sounds as they appear to you are not only different from those that are really present, but they sometimes behave so strangely as to seem quite impossible.
I have to say this can continue for months and months. It's sort of like your brain gets altered for that particular phrase, and it continues to sound like singing for a very, very long time.
Sometimes behave so strangely. All right, so here we have just one small indication that music is, well, it behaves very strangely. I mean, think about this. We started with some basic speech, repeated it a few times. Somewhere along the way, it leapt into song. How did it change like that? And if that's all it takes to turn something into music, then what exactly is music, really?
Now, to do that, we had a high school in New York City called LaGuardia High School. There's a choral teacher who teaches 15 and 16-year-olds. We called them up and said, could we have your kids for an hour and a half? And we regularly go to this class with different kinds of neuroscience problems. And we say to them, like, no, here's Watkins, Jim Watson, and here's physicists talking about, or here's neurologists explaining where the word teacup might occupy places in your brain. Could you give us a musical equivalent? And these kids come and they do, doo-wop versions, and they do Bach fugues, and they do this and they do that. And sometimes we'll be sitting there, and there are these 15-year-olds coming, and they just keep coming in with new ideas. And I said, well, when will they stop? So they're 15. They will never stop, actually. And there's sometimes a look I see on Jad's face while we're sitting there on the floor recording these things of sheer joy. Like, this is so much fun. And there's so many people happy to have fun with us. And it's such an enormous celebration of curiosity that sometimes you just want to lie down and say thank you to the entire universe that this is the way you're allowed to lead your life. And I thank you for having me here and for giving me the company of people who feel pretty much the same way, whether they be poets or writers or novelists or just strange like Chris. But everybody...